Ethos. Ethos is a place where you can be, belong, and become. What does that mean? It's been about a year to the date that we were meeting in my backyard. We met in my backyard 1 year ago today. How do I know that? Because the Strawberry Festival is happening today. And my daughter won the Queen of the Strawberry Festival. Just a little side note. So it's been a year, and we've gone from backyards to cafes to the loft. And I don't know where the future is going to take us, to a bigger place, to a smaller place, or back to my backyard. But you know what? I just love what Ethos is. I ask myself every time I come, why am I going there? And then I reflect on those three words, be, belong, become. What do those really mean? And I think for those of us that are here in the room, we kind of share the same sentiments, maybe from different perspectives on what that actually means. But for me, and you hear this term thrown out there a lot, is becoming the best you can be, or the best version of yourself. I think that at Ethos, it's more than just the best person individually, physically that you can be, but spiritually as well. And why is that? I think for many of us here that grew up in different religions, we asked ourselves those questions, but oftentimes we're just turned away or made to go along, as Tony liked to say, the sheep, right? We just bat our way along. And questions aren't welcome usually in a typical religious or church institution. You follow the way that it's taught, and that's it. Not putting other churches down. I like to find common ground or positive in those situations, because it's really weird that we can worship and praise or believe in the same belief, but do it so differently. And we choose to do it here at Ethos in a different way. We welcome individuality, and we welcome each person's perspective. And I think that's how we are being ourselves here. We're bringing what we believe, and we're listening to what other people believe or their perspectives. And we're able to belong in this community because of that, because we not only welcome it, but it's nurtured here. It's anticipated almost, especially from my side. I think the opposite end of the spectrum, which I thought I was bringing to the table, is actually common ground here at Ethos, and I love it. So we're being ourselves and belonging to this community, and in doing so, we are becoming the best version of ourselves in our lives away from Ethos and in our lives here. So thank you to the group that comes together here every week and helps me become a better spiritual person and a better individual, the best version of myself that I can be. And if you guys are out there watching online from home, we'd love to have you guys here, and we'd love to have you experience it. There's no other way to experience it than being right here in the room with us. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you can't be here today, please blog on our YouTube channel, text us, and we'll add it into our discussion as well. But we can't wait to get started with our very own. I still call her What a Betty, because that's how I remembered her name for so long. But we like to welcome the keyboard and vocal stylings of Betty.
Good morning. Can I just start this off with an oldie but goodie? All right.
Bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Oh, I need you. Oh, runs a deep, your grace is more, grace is to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. When this life has overwhelmed me, and I feel like giving up, I will cling to all you've promised. It will always be enough. When the world around me crumbles, and it's hard to understand, I will run to you, my shelter. I am safe within your hands. Oh, you are my help forever. I will not fear. God, you are with me. I know you're near. You'll never leave me. I will trust in you alone. When I'm broken in the silence, I can hear you whispering. You're not alone here in these trials. I will hold you faithfully. Oh, you are my help forever. I will not fear. God, you are with me. I know you're near. You'll never leave me. I will trust in you alone. And when my heart and strength have failed me, my God, you won't. Your name is mighty. I will trust in you alone. Oh, you are a fortress for the weak, the strength that carries me when I am on my knees. The cross reminds my heart to trust your faithfulness and love will always be enough. Oh, you are a fortress for the weak, your strength that carries me when I am on my knees.
you for singing with me.
Thank you, Betty. How's everybody feeling? Good. Isn't it interesting? Like some of the older songs or praise songs, they mean something new to us every 5 or 6 years, don't they? Like as things shift or like words or phrases are used, isn't it interesting how like, that phrase, I don't know about that anymore, but that phrase actually has like a whole lot more substance to me. Anyone there? Anyone hear words or phrases now in different songs and you're like, oh, like that has like some energy now, or that phrase, no energy. Like what? Anyone care to share like a phrase or something or a word or something? Okay, good. When you hear blood and lamb and that, what pops up in your mind? Is that energizing or is that? Okay, got it. For you, it's archaic. It doesn't fit. Okay, thank you. Okay. You like that part or don't like that? Okay, got it. Gotcha. Amazing Grace, beautiful song, but for you, when they hit like that, saved a wretch like me, you're like, I don't feel like a wretch. I don't feel like a wretch. I feel like, yeah, okay, good, interesting. Anyone else? This is good.
So picking a song that has the cross in it is very tricky.
For you, that's like a tricky thing, the cross.
Just listening to it. So when it's symbolized more as love rather than
Punishment.
punishment, but I'm okay with it.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Nice. So for you, the cross, when the cross is sung in an action of love rather than an action of atonement or punishment, there's something beautiful to that. Got it. Nice. Okay. Good. Anybody else? This is fun. Yep.
Grace comes to mind, just Amazing Grace, and it's so much more important to me. And where I've been and where I am and where I'm going, I'll walk in His grace, and yeah.
It's interesting, the Amazing Grace song. I used to think, for me personally, I used to see it as I'm a sinner, I'm bad, I need grace. Lately, I've been realizing I need to show myself grace, but I also need to show others grace. And like that's been a shift for me. For me, it was stop singing about it and start living it. For me personally, that was a shift for me when I sing some of those songs. Well, cool. Again, we've been talking about this: be, belong, become. Right? Be yourself. Be fully present. Be you. Right? Also, when we can be ourselves, we can learn and we can essentially share what we have, and we can belong in a group of a setting where we know we're accepted and loved. And when we do that, we begin to thrive and we become the very best version of ourselves. Anyone with me? Yeah, it's beautiful. This Lamblike protest, we're almost finished. We're almost finished with this because I'm not going to go through like verse by verse by verse. I've decided that's something that like I'm not really interested in doing as much. I'm going to do a bunch of stuff on the website for you if you want to like follow along and do like in-depth study and kind of move through that book. I'm going to do that in like blogs and other formats if that's something that's interesting to you, but I'm not going to do that here. Are you okay with that? Yeah, okay, cool. But I did want to share, there's these 2 chapters, and next week I'll kind of fill up the rest of the book, but there's these 2 chapters in the book I want to talk about today that I think have been really kind of misused and kind of odd. And so I wanted to share some of those, but there's some really a lot of beauty there that I wanted to share as well. So before we do, let me ask you this. Name and describe a movie and why you loved the ending. So think about a movie that you've watched in your past or recently where you thought, that ending, like, oh, hit me. Or, or whatever. It invoked emotions that you just thought, that was an incredible ending. Anybody? Walter Mitty. What did you like about the ending of Walter Mitty?
Can't remember on the spot now.
Okay, nice.
It's one that just like it just hit me.
Yeah, you essentially live your story, your dreams, and he sees himself as that. I'm inserting my own guess as to why you love the ending. It might just be you liked the character?
Mine's not a movie, it's actually a Broadway play.
Oh,
Wicked.
nice. Oh, Wicked, nice.
And growing up, watching Wizard of Oz my whole life, that's my favorite movie. You know, oh, there's no place like home, and oh, whatever. Poor little girl, nobody listens to her, and she goes and finds herself, and she realizes what she really wanted was always there in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So in Wicked, it tells you the story before the Wizard of Oz, and they always made this witch that was trying to hunt Dorothy down as the bad witch. Well, at the end, it turns out she really wasn't the bad witch, she was really a good witch. And when the bucket, if you guys remember from Wizard of Oz, they took the bucket of water and Dorothy dumped it on her and she melted. Oh, what a world. And she goes and everybody thinks, oh, she killed the Wicked Witch. And Wicked just blew my mind having this concept of what that movie was trying to say. And then whoever came up with this idea of writing Wicked, well, they threw the water on her and, you know, she went away and everybody's like, oh, it's just like the movie. This is how it was meant before the Wizard of Oz. Sorry if I'm killing this, you know.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Spoilers.
Little
It's good.
scary spoiler alert. And after everybody leaves, the soldiers leave and Dorothy leaves and oh, she's going to go back to Oz and everything. All of a sudden here comes the Green Witch, Alphaba, right? She comes back to life and they're laughing. Oh, they really thought that bucket of water was going to go away. So, I mean, the reason why I like it is, first of all, it's unexpected. And second of all, it reminds me that things aren't always what they appear to be, you know? We only see what we want to see. And there's more to a story than just what's
Nice.
face value.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that ending is perfect. It's a wicked ending. Yep.
Alice in Wonderland, not the last one, but before with Mark Short as the Mad Hatter. That version, I love the storyline at the end, how just in general, she started with her fears and her shoulda, woulda, couldas, and everybody's putting on her, she should do this, you know, not, she wasn't buying into it, it wasn't for her, it wasn't her thing. And then at the end, she becomes brave to do what she wants to do and is accepted and loved and sees everybody kind of for who they really are and still loves them, so.
Beautiful. Anyone ever see the movie Big Fish? Oh, that's on your list now. Big Fish. It's a beautiful ending. All right. Anyone else? I hear a lot of happy endings. Anyone love a movie with a really sad ending? Okay. Yeah, that's a sad ending.
It's sort of, it is.
Tragic,
sad, but
beautiful.
yeah, that kind of melancholy. They find each other finally, but it's already so many years have passed. But the family united finally as one.
Nice, and you like that concept. Here's a Huffington Post. They gave a list of some of the best, most frustrating, loved movie endings, and I'm going to share with you a couple of them today. Here's one of them: Sixth Sense. How many of you have ever watched this? Oh man, how many of you at the end of that movie were like, "What? Like he was a ghost? Like how is that?" Yeah, I just ruined it for everyone, especially watching online. He was a ghost? Like how he started, oh, this is all for her. Got it. So trippy. Such a trippy ending, right? And it kind of threw us for a loop. Anyone ever seen Memento, by the way? Memento? That's a trippy beginning, ending. Really kind of cool. I'm telling you, you need to be writing these movies down. Another one, The Usual Suspects. Anyone ever see that? Oh, it's one of those movies. At the end, you realize the storyteller is a really good storyteller, and he's been borrowing from all these different pictures and ideas in the office, and you walk away and you think, oh, like this guy, like brilliant. The Usual Suspects. Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. Oh, this one. What a happy ending, like freedom. Out of curiosity, what was your favorite scene in that movie? When they're together on the beach. Yeah. All right, good. Anyone else?
Hands up in the air.
Okay, when he's digging up.
Looking around,
Yeah.
sure that no one else is watching.
Right. Oh, that's good. I didn't think about that one. How about when he finally gets through the pipes and he comes out into the.
There's so many of those moments.
Oh, so beautiful. All right. Shawshank Redemption was very high on that list. Inception, of course. Why do you suppose people loved that non-ending? Ending. it ends, what was that? Okay, good. People don't like to be in the liminal space at the end. We want conclusion, right? Resolution, but there is no resolution. It's like, is it a dream within a dream within a dream? Is it still, or is this reality? What's going on? I don't know. Am I in a dream within a dream? Right? Like all these kind of questions begin to spur. Inception drove people nuts, but it was one of the most famous endings in a movie. This was ranked number 2 on that list, which I find interesting. This one, notice it's not the last infinite, the end game. This ending sparked tons of controversy. Some people absolutely loved it, and some people, many, many, many people hated it. Why do you suppose some people hated it, first off? Okay, yeah. You see a lot of your favorite heroes, all of a sudden they're dead, they're gone, and the bad guy wins. That's unfortunate. Yeah, they're not supposed to go up and they're not supposed to become like charcoal. Yeah. Anyone else, like when you saw that movie, you thought, I want my $20 back? Anybody? Okay, yeah, Hulk, you're like, Bulk, the Incredible Bulk. Like, there's no Hulk there anymore. Yeah, some people love this ending, some people hated it. And I find it really interesting going off of that movie. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to give it all away. But it's interesting when you compare the two endings. One ending just leaves it wide open. Where again, the way to end things, right? The way to find resolution is through violent, chaotic means. And that's how the world begins anew. Do you guys see it? That was the first one. How, for some of you, without trying to not completely give it away for people who haven't seen it, but how does Endgame differ a bit with their ending on how they perceive the world beginning again anew? What do you notice? It's a violent movie no matter what. Okay, interesting. There's still some chaos, but there's some unity. Anyone else? How about this? There's always a movement to go back to a certain point, right? Where there was less of the violence, less of this and this and this. But to get there, they had to move through some of the chaos. At the end, some people are dead, right? I can't tell you which because I want to live. But yeah, interesting. Some people, but here's the thing. I was reading all these different online blogs. Some people hated the ending of Endgame. Absolutely hated it. Other people said Infinity War's ending was better. They should have just left it there. Like, what? It was interesting to hear the different perspectives. How would you like the thing to end? That's always a question. For the Jewish people who are writing the book of Revelation, here's what they said. The ending is never an ending. It's always the beginning. And so for them, Tikkun Olam is not the ending of like the world and everything we know. It's actually the ending of an era, of a violent era, in which we come together and we begin creating the world anew, where we bring peace, wholeness, life, restoration, forgiveness. That's it. But here's the thing. They also understood that the world is cyclical, and so are empires, and so are nations. It's going to be a while, but guess what will happen once again? We'll experience turmoil and brokenness and pain. But what do we do? What's our purpose? Tikkun Olam, to bring wholeness and peace back and live in that as long as we can. How do you feel about that?
I wish I could avoid the chaos and the whatever, but
Okay.
people don't learn their history, so they tend to repeat it. And I'd like to not repeat my chaos in my history,
Interesting, nice.
you know, and so that's what I set my mind to, is staying aware and trying to walk in peace.
If you could live in one of those, like, if the world, if empire, if life is cyclical, if these different, like chaos, brokenness, life, order, repair, oftentimes you'll see, like, in history, chaos, brokenness, disrepair, pain, oftentimes there'll be, like, hundreds of years of it. And then after that, there's times of peace for a couple another 100 years. Where would you like to be?
I don't think it matters to me as long as I learned something along the way so that the next time chaos comes around, I know how to deal with chaos and I can deal with it differently, so I wouldn't really see it as chaos. Might be chaos for some person, but from my perspective, I know this is going to happen, so let's just get through it the best that we can.
Interesting, okay. Where do the movies usually place it? Are movies typically in the times of peace and relaxing and where are the movies that everyone gravitates toward? Isn't that interesting? We gravitate toward those movies because, let's be honest, none of us are going to go to the movie that's like, everything's great. Everything is awesome. And there's no conflict. There's no disruption. Why is that something that we just don't think is very interesting to watch? If I told you, movie night tonight at the Wuerfel's house, we're going to watch the movie called Nothing Really Happens, and everyone's happy. Interesting. How did you get to that place? Does that place last forever? Here's another interesting question. How has heaven been portrayed to you? So let me ask you this. If you'd rather watch the time where there's like to chaos to repair, if you want to see that cycle over and over again, but you don't find it interesting to watch it, where you just watch someone just live in like no conflict, life is just good. If that's not an interesting thing to watch, why would it be an interesting thing to live? Any comments or thoughts on that? I'm going off on a tangent right now, by the way. I'm just having fun.
I remember Dr. Jordan Peterson talking about one of the great minds of old history on how their philosophy was if man had everything they needed and they just sat around procreating and there was total peace, they would break something and ruin and cause chaos in order to have something happen because nobody can stand it for very long.
Okay, interesting. There would need to be some kind of chaos. There'd be something where someone would do something, and before you know it. Interesting. All right.
Solving problems.
If there are no problems to solve, if everything's just awesome, I don't know. Like, this is interesting to consider. Would it be an interesting movie to watch? Okay. And here's what I love about the Jewish culture was they were saying, let's reprogram. Let's program ourselves to not seek out the chaos, but learn how to move through it and find peace and restoration and wholeness and healing. Because it's going to come again. Isn't that interesting? Let's change the way we view it. And so for the Jewish people, they're living in a time in this first century where one voice is saying, no, the only way toward peace, toward wholeness, toward repair is through violence. That's the only way. We have to have violence. We have to have this kind of empire where it's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's what's going to heal the world. Whereas the Judaism was saying, no, it's through shalom. Nothing missing, nothing broken, learning to recycle, hate with love. So you have these two very differing opinions going on, which is essentially the book of Revelation. It's showing two different perspectives saying, we think this one's better. Is that the best summary you've ever heard of Revelation? It's so easy, but that's all it was. So how many of you have ever heard about these four characters? The four horsemen of the apocalypse. The four horsemen. Anybody? I have a t-shirt that says the four ponies of the apocalypse, and it's the My Little Ponies. I thought it was so funny. Yeah, these four horsemen seem to show up now a lot in different literature, different horror movies, all that stuff. And here's the thing. This is not to be taken literally, all right? From the writer's perspective, they weren't writing about literal horses. For them, they were saying, here's one way of bringing peace to the world, and we're going to share another. Do you guys get it? So one way of bringing peace to the world that looks like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is really Domitian's games. So I've shared with this before, but I'm going to go even deeper with it. Domitian had a really interesting thing where he would bring, again, we have no idea what this looks like, but because his populace had so much anxiety and angst and anger, to control the populace, they would have certain games where the populace could just let all their energy and rage out while they're watching, not participating, but mainly watching others do violent things. And when they did that, they could actually control the populace. Interesting. Again, we would have no idea like what that looks like today, would we? But again, get people angry enough, like letting all that rage, violence, and all that stuff come out, but in a way that it's not affecting the government or each other as much. And now you've just caused them to be sedentary in their protest. Yeah? Anyone watch any of this stuff? Have you noticed that, like, for football, they do a lot of, like, American flag and all of that kind of stuff? Why do you suppose that is? I'm having fun, though. I mean, you don't, yeah, why is that we're the only nation that spends a lot of time, like, doing God Bless America, Pledge Allegiance to the flag, all of that? And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying, why is it now that we have, like, the army flying over and all of this during our sporting events? Like, why is that a big deal? Why are we doing it? Well, that's interesting. Hey, it just got intimate. Posturing.
Our game, this is our country, this is how we do things, and
This is our
try
team.
one up it.
Got it.
It needs to make you feel part of that community too. If you feel part of the American community, then you must like football.
Okay.
So to increase numbers in their football game, well, let's use what's already there. You're already allegiant to the flag, so be allegiant to the NFL as well.
Interesting. Okay. To be an American is to like football. To be American is to like watching two guys just bludgeon each other, right? Robot Wars. I put that picture up just because I think it's hilarious.
Sounds like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, interesting, right? So again, for Domitian, and again, you can read about the whys. He actually writes over and over again in his speeches, and also his he'll write to his different officers. The main reason he does the Domitian Games was to cause the populace to let out their aggression, their anger, in some way so that he could control them easier. Once you get people essentially letting all their emotion, anger out, there's nothing left. And so when you do something that's crazy or you ask them to essentially follow, they'll do it. Because all that aggression, all that anger's already been put out. Do you guys get it? So here's what he'd do. He would have these things called the Domitian Games, and he would have 4 riders. And again, anyone ever been to like medieval times? Isn't it weird that you're screaming your head off for that one night? Did you ever stop and like, okay, wait, this isn't real? Secondly, it's rigged. Like, no matter how loud you're screaming for the red knight, the blue already is going to win because they already figured that out beforehand. Or there's like, I even heard someone say that there's like always the option, there's between 2, and depending on which one is louder, but more than likely you're not one of the 2, right? But we scream, we go crazy. Like, I'll even hear people like, kill him! I'm like, dude, this is not real. Like, those are really dull knives or whatever, you know, those aren't even, but that's what we do. So the Domitian Games, they had 4 riders. And these 4 riders, they had the white, the black, the red, and then they had one that was considered, at the end, death. But I'll share more about that guy later. But these 4 riders, they would ride around, and they would compete with each other in these games. The white horse rider was always the winner, by the way. Never did the red or the black ever win. Interesting? Yeah. So they rooted for the white. And so the white was usually the champion that was like the guy, the up-and-coming hero, the celebrity. And this celebrity, he would essentially slay a bunch of other people, and then he'd end up killing the red and the black knights. And afterwards, there's tons of bodies. It's like carnage. And people, by the way, are all wearing white. When you came, you wore white. So again, anyone ever reading the book of Revelation, you already hear all of this. 24 people, choir members singing about this. Domitian sitting on his throne, jewels all around him. And so here's the thing. At the end of the games, a guy with a cart, dressed in black, would come out. He would put all the bodies in the cart, and he would wheel them out. And that was death. And there was a somber moment. But then the white would come back out, paraded around as the warrior, the guy everyone rooted for, because you were wearing what color? Yeah, you had your Lions jersey on. By the way, do any of your team members that you're rooting for from whatever team you root for, do they care about you? Like, are the Anaheim Ducks, right? I don't even know, because it doesn't matter, because the Red Wings are the best anyways. But do the Ducks care about you, Karen? Like, do they show up and they're like, this one's for Karen? Yeah. Joe, are the Angels like coming together and they're like, all right, guys, look, we got to win this one for Joe this time? Okay. Most of these guys don't care an inch about you, or I should just say, what's going on in your life, who you are. Most of them are concerned about their own lives, their contracts, where they're going. If they go to another city, they're not thinking, oh no, but I have my allegiance to this group. Very rarely do you see that. When you do, those people are like, yay. But you don't see that very often. What's happening again, let me go back to Domitian's games. They're learning essentially the populace is pouring all of their energy into the game. They're calmed, and they're rooting for the white horse rider, who essentially is representative of Domitian, Empire, Rome. You guys got it? So it's really fascinating to me. When you look at now Revelation 6, 1 through 2, I just want to read a little bit, and I want you to understand, like, as a first century person, when you're reading it, this makes sense. You're not thinking future predictions. You're not looking for future, like, horse riders, any of this from the sky. This all makes sense to you. You're thinking Domitian games. That's what they thought, because that's what was happening during their lifetime. And so here's what it said. The 7 seals, the Lamb opens them. And here's what it does. I looked up and I saw a white horse standing there. Its rider carried a bow, and a crown was placed on his head. He rode out to win many battles and gain the victory. Some people have been like, oh, that's Jesus. It's like in white, right? Well, no. None of those people during the Domitian games were like, it's Jesus. He just murdered all those other people. We won. That's not what a person during that time era is thinking. They're thinking Domitian. They're thinking Rome. He won out. He won many battles. So the white horse, again, this symbol of empire, power. That's the idea behind the white horse rider. And so let me ask you this. If you want to bring peace to the world, are you going to find peace, restoration, wholeness through pushing power on others, defeating others, putting your heel on them and saying, I'm in charge? Anyone ever have a boss that's done that to you? How did that feel? Did you think, you're right, I'm going to follow you to the end of my life. You're such a great leader. Like, why is that not interesting?
Own self and have our own energy going forward and our own good ideas.
Which is not the way of Rome.
Yeah.
It's, we're united. We do this. This is our tribe. We are Angels fans. Like, don't even think about Detroit, right? That's the movement. That's how they thought. Again, the white horse rider is power. It's power being pushed on the weak, controlling the populace. That's what the white rider represented. It's victory. It's Roman. So here's the other thing. There's another rider. It was the red one. It was representative of war. Rome, everything revolved around war, right? Your sons and daughters, they were warriors. Actually, if you were a daughter, you gave birth to sons who were warriors. It's very patriarchal, very much all about war. And so, no, the Red Horse Rider, for them, they understood this thing to be war. Let me ask you this. Turn to someone next to you, actually, and answer this question first. Try to be honest with yourself. This one I didn't like asking myself this week. So I'm going to ask you, do you believe watching violence affects you? Now, this is a personal question for you. Be honest with yourself and the people next to you. Do you believe, and maybe it doesn't, I don't know, but do you believe watching violence affects you? And maybe even like, how does it affect you? So just take the next couple, maybe minute and a half. Answer that question to the people around you. Maybe some music's being played in the background. Give you one more minute. So, out of curiosity, let me just ask, hands in the air, do you believe violence affects you? If you watch it, okay, interestingly. How many of you feel like, I'm not really affected? Okay, that's interesting. I thought there would be like half and half, to be honest with you. Okay. Just affects you in general. Okay, all right, interesting. I for some reason I had this idea that like it would be half and half, where people would be like, "No, I'm just kind of I'm accustomed to it. I've seen it. I can walk away and eat a sandwich later and be like fine, whatever." All right, interesting. Tell me, let me ask you this then. How does it affect you, Joe? If you're watching it, are you like where do you fall with it?
It doesn't bother me so much.
Okay. Let me Deadpool. So you watched Deadpool.
I thought it was unnecessary violence, but I watched it.
Got it. I love Joe because like
You said it was funny, so I was waiting for that funny part.
yeah. I love Joe because we could have like an earthquake right now and be like, just hold on, it'll be over in a second. Just be like Mr. Cool, calm, collected. It's good. So for you, like that kind of movie, you're just kind of, whatever.
Pretty much.
Okay, got it. But you also said some of it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, good. Anyone else? Like
So that movie didn't really affect me, but if I'm watching Schindler's List, I'm not.
Oh, yes.
interesting. Okay.
No.
So Schindler's List, kind of a more realistic movie, like where you know it it actually happened. Why does that affect you more than Deadpool?
Well, the character build also. In Deadpool, the guy is getting knifed in the face and whatever coming through the door, whatever happened, you don't know really anything about that. If there was character building on even the bad guy, there'd probably be more empathy. So there's that aspect, but then you know it happened in history, and my family comes from a list of a lot that's happened too, so it's close to, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the character of Deadpool is always going to be the character of Deadpool. He's a stock character. The bad guys are mostly always going to be, well, they're bad guys. They're going to, and you almost get to the place where you're like, well, they kind of deserve it, and he's kind of a jerk too sometimes, and so he deserves like a knife to his head periodically, but luckily he's able to live, right? And whatever. Yeah, you get used to like stock characters and personalities. That's interesting. Anyone else? Does it affect you positive or negative? Maybe let me ask that. Do you walk away thinking, ew, or, all right.
So a lot of things with saying watching violence, because you're talking about really mild violence. But if you were to be exposed to some of the like the dark web kind of violence,
Okay.
It might be misinforming, or it desensitizes you and it makes you believe that that is the right way to approach conflict. But then if you say watching violence in real life, like yeah, it could affect you.
When I was in 4th grade, there was a girl in our community. We lived in an apartment complex, and her name was Cameron. And she was an 8th grader, and she was a bully. And I remember she would come down there, and I didn't know any better. She was trying to get like the guy's attention, that this guy that was older, she was always trying to get his attention by doing stuff, especially to the younger kids. And so she would be down there, and we'd be playing basketball, and she would come up and just take the ball and like throw it and then laugh at us. She would sometimes come up and kick us or push us or like try to get in fights with us. And I remember all of us, we would like scheme about how we were going to get back at Cameron. And I remember watching these movies of like, what do you do to the bad guy? Well, you like karate chop him. But I didn't know how to do karate chops. So I figured, well, I'm gonna punch her one of these days. And I'd never really like, when you punch a person, I don't know if you've ever done that before, but when you like cold cock a person to the face, that's different. Like that's a different feeling. I had not had that feeling before. And so Cameron, we're in the middle of basketball, and Cameron takes the ball from my hand, and do you know what she does next? She looks at me and she kicks me where all little boys are terrified to be kicked. Most of the little boys like don't know exactly what that felt like. I got that feeling for the first time, and it felt like every and I was on the ground, and tears coming down my eyes, and I said, "Don't cry, Tony. Don't cry." And she's laughing. And she walks off with the ball. And I look over at my comrades, and they're like, what are you going to do? And so I thought, here's my moment. I'd never punched someone in the face before. And I'd never really punched someone. So I walked over, and I was like, she's going to get it. And so I walk over, and I touch her on the shoulder. I'm like, excuse me, I want my ball back. And she turns around in like this evil, sinister look that only Cameron of 8th grade can give you. And she looks at me and she starts laughing. And that's the moment that I pull back. And again, this thing's floppy. I don't know what I'm doing with it. And I'm like, oh! Like, oh my God. And I hit her. I hit her right in the nose. And I remember like, kakoosh, like a door knocker. And I hit her. And then I'm like, okay, what happens next? I'm looking and I see her holding her face. And I'm thinking, do we like, what do we do? What do we do? And I look at my friends and they're like, holy crap, you hit her. I don't know what to do. So we're kind of in this weird moment of we don't know what to do. And then that's when I see the blood trickling down and I'm like, oh crap. Blood. And then she starts crying. And then she runs away. And all of my friends are looking at it. We're all looking at each other like, what do we do? What do we do? And some of them are like, oh no, you just hit a girl. And I'm thinking, she's not a girl. She's like a monster, right? She's like a goblin. Like she's evil. But then I realized, but she's also a human being. I just hit her in the face. And then it isn't long before her big brother's coming down here and chasing me. And I begin to realize, like, this whole violent act isn't quite as cool as I thought it was. It was the first time I ever hit a person in the face. And I remember it thinking, I don't think I ever want to do that again. Because all of a sudden, Deadpool became real, right? All of a sudden, that action scene in the Goonies where he hits him for the first time, it became real to me. And I realized I don't have a taste for it. It's not me. Some people go backwards, they'll do that, and they want more. It's just interesting. For me personally, the way of Rome didn't quite work, and hitting it, like door knocking her in the face, it changed my perspective on violence a bit. It's interesting. Yep, please.
Sometimes it's a justification for violence. An example for me was when I was 11 years old. I had a little friend, a neighbor that lived really close by. She was coming out to play, and we were going to play together. And as she's walking out, her father's coming out with a beer can, with a T-shirt. And as she's walking towards me, he kicks her and knocks her on the ground. And the first thing I did is I jumped the guy and I scratched his face. And I remember the neighbors coming out and they pulled him away from the girl. So just, again, it's just something that when you're watching something like that, it's somebody that's an innocent victim. I just can't sit there and watch it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like when you're little, there's not a lot of tools in the tool bag to deal with conflict, is there? For me, the door knocking was the first thing I thought of. But now that we're older, it's interesting too, like we get more tools, conflict tools, and the question is, which one will you pull? I'm hoping the door knocker doesn't come out again. I'm hoping for me personally, the tool I'm going to pick out is going to be a different one. So many years later. But it's just interesting to think about which tool will you use. I've seen many YouTube videos where this cop is just letting someone pound him or scream at him or threaten him, and he's so patient. And then he gets a moment where he disarms him, maybe does something a little different. I've seen those moments. I've also seen moments where they use violence. It's interesting which tools you will use from the toolbox. The red one, again, war, violence. They essentially, notice this, war takes peace from the earth. Isn't that an interesting way of viewing war? Because oftentimes we're told war is going to bring peace. But when has war ever really brought peace? It really hasn't brought, was there ever a war that ended all wars? Well, no. The only way a war is going to end all wars is when no one's here in the aftermath. Am I right? Kurt Vonnegut, I love what he says about war. If you've ever read his writings, he's fantastic. Where's evil? It's that large part of every man and woman that wants to hate without limit, that wants to hate with God on its side. What did you notice about that one? Do you notice most of these movements, God is always on their side? The Crusades, what are both people screaming as they're going into battle? Yeah, it's for our God. Our God is on our side. And you almost picture the divine up there being like, you're all crazy. Like, I'm not choosing sides. You're not acting like any of my children. It's that part of every man that finds all kinds of ugliness so attractive. It's that part of an imbecile that punishes and vilifies and makes war gladly. I find this interesting. We live in a culture right now that we make war very heroic, don't we? And please understand, like I have a cousin who died in Iraq. And I remember him talking about war not in a heroic way, but just, I'm doing this. He really felt like he was doing this for his country. He wanted to protect our country from an evil force that he felt that was there. And he lost his life. And it was interesting. He did not like heroicism being published, didn't like all that was going on with how the media was kind of using the military. But that's exactly what they did with his story afterwards. I remember just being, like it's such a sad moment. But that's what happens in our culture today. And so the red horse, again, one of the questions is, will war bring us peace? Will war be the end all? Again, for war, according to the Jews, it was one of the biggest evils ever. To hold power and misuse it and hurt others was an absolute affront to what they felt the gospel of Jesus was. Interesting, right? Yep.
Society that, but then if that was the Jews' position, that's why they were persecuted for thousands of years leading up to the Holocaust. And it wasn't until they formed their own country where they had an army and a form of defense and aggression that they actually have preserved their people. So I mean, there's a glorification of violence, but then there's also the efficacy of violence if it truly is designed to quell evil so you can live peacefully.
And so during that era, during the first century, there was an uprising where a group of people, a large one, they were called zealots, they decided we're going to overthrow Rome, and they went and essentially tried to murder the emperor, or not the emperor, the governor of Israel, where Israel was. The Jews did. And what happened is what happened over and over again in the past was Rome got angry because Rome holds the power. Rome turned around and in 70 AD destroys their temple, and anyone who wasn't able to run to the hills was murdered. So you had innocent young ones, you had pregnant women, you had elderly, all murdered because they said, well, we're going to fight against the power system using violence. And so for them, this is a very real, raw moment where they said, well, what were the teachings of Jesus and how do we follow them? And the teachings of Jesus were not revolt with violence. It was we hold power differently. We respond differently when injustice happens. So I can say from this perspective of the Jews during that era, they were licking their wounds. They were saying, man, like that didn't go over well again. It didn't go over well in Babylon. It didn't go over well in Egypt. It didn't go over well with Greece. And it didn't go well with Rome. So are we going to change the narrative we have, or are we going to continue doing the same thing? And unfortunately, one could also say they're doing the same thing, and you have a lot of Palestinians who could potentially also say they are being victimized. How long until the ones holding power become the ones without power? I don't know. Like, those are all questions that are going on during that era, and I think still happen today. Ooh, that was a can that Mike opened. That's awesome. Famine. Here's another thing. Famine. Imbalance of life, basically, is the idea here with the Black Horse Rider. Would you say we have an imbalance of life today? Like an imbalance of economy and goods and freedoms? Anybody? Where do you see it most? Social media, how? Interesting. How do we see power, an imbalance of power right now in our culture?
Look at other countries like Venezuela going through what they're going, and we're just here like, okay.
Okay, good.
I mean, they're suffering, they don't have any money to eat, they're starving, literally. And there's a total imbalance of power right there. Everybody's fighting, you're fine, you know, just looking at it from the outside and going, okay, yeah, total imbalance.
Yeah, and the idea of like trickle down, you know, like one group has power, will it trickle down or not? Will it share resources or will it withhold resources? That's always the question. Again, like talking trickle down economics, trickle down empire, all of that. Will the people with power, with money, with resources, will they hold it to themselves or will they allow it to trickle down? That's always a question you have many economics talk about, you have many politicians talk about. It's constant. Will the groups with power share resource or will they hold it themselves? And that's empire. And so Rome was not sharing, was not building. It was essentially us alone is all we care about. There is no helping anyone else. It's us. It's we hold the power and we hold it by an imbalance.
And sometimes when people, most of the time when everybody's in charge, that even though their heart may be to want it to trickle down and want equality and more balance financially and societally, who's given that opportunity oftentimes can squander it or they can misuse it, or so it has to be brought down carefully. And then there's the infighting and the dirty fighting, and so it's just like be defensive, even though you want to have a better, it seems like everybody seems like they want to do something good, right? That's their inner goal. But then once they get there, it's like a shitstorm. Sorry.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's hard.
And this is what's going on for the first century people, the Jesus followers. They're saying like, we have this really beautiful way of interacting, navigating the world, and we just haven't seen it really come to fruition. We have this really interesting thing that's in its infancy stage, really, called democracy. And even like our forefathers created some really beautiful ways in which to deal with it, how to live it, but we haven't really seen it fully the last 100 years. We've struggled with it, and we've seen some things where like power over freedom, power over the betterment of the people, and it's been unfortunate to watch. And so the question is, will the gospel message reach fruition? Will it be lived out or not? Will democracy win the day, or will a different form win the day, right? That's the question they're asking. And they're saying this imbalance, this way of living, this value of Rome actually starves the world. It doesn't make it better. It hurts everyone. One of my favorite quotes, what do we need? We don't need constant stimulation. Are you sure? Poisoned food, carcinogenic air, useless work for which we are highly paid so we can move rapidly from one place to another on projectiles at lethal speeds so we can buy highly priced electronic devices that cause us to be less aware of life all around us. Anyone love that quote? That's what we don't need. We don't need that. It essentially starves our soul. And again, interesting that all of these comments would fit perfectly, except for like projectiles that you ride. They're not quite there yet in Rome. Yeah, they're still using horses, not even buggies yet. The last one, when all of this takes place, Matt, did you want to take a picture of that? Take a picture. It's a good quote. I went over and over my mind because I have this on my screen and I can't find the quote, to be honest with you. I thought it was, what's his name from, it'll come to me. The guy that wrote, Seth Godin. I think it's Seth Godin, but I couldn't find the actual quote from him. I've just had it for so long. I'm pretty sure it's Seth Godin, but I don't want to say 100%, so look it up. Death. When all of this takes place, when imbalance, war, and power are misused, that's when the horse comes out with the guy in the hood just cleaning up the mess. And so, again, at the end of the day, that's what we look forward to. When Rome gets its way, when beastly empire gets its way, we experience death, we experience pain. And so again, the consequences of war, power, and greed is death. And that's what we kind of hope we don't experience. When we experience it, 12 through 14, it says, through 17, it says that not only do we experience those pain, that kind of pain, but it affects the innocent, it affects nature, and the people who have abused it at some point will begin crying out as well. Have you seen all of this take place? All of it we see over and over again. It's very cyclical. Right now, our environment is like screaming out. And unfortunately, again, our oceans are just becoming wastelands. Our drinking water is terrible, especially here in Southern California. Creation's crying out because of this imbalance. The innocent lives of people, we talked about Venezuela, we talked about so many different places. There are innocent lives screaming out, right? And those who continue to abuse power, watch as they begin to cry out too. In the end, what the picture is, if that is the gospel you follow, there's a cry out at the end before everything goes to hell. And you hope that you're not a part of that. Am I right? Here's the last part, Revelation 7. And I wanted to share this because I find it so interesting. Here's the counter picture to that. It starts with this. How many of you ever heard there's going to be a group of people at the end of the world? It's going to be 144,000. And you heard this number was like a literal number, and you thought, as you were little, you thought, that's a big number. As you grew older, you're like, that's not a lot. That's not much. Especially thinking like money here in Southern California, that's enough to buy you maybe a small garage. Like, I don't know what you can buy with 144,000. As far as people, it said they're divided up. There's these different groups, these different 12 groups. One of them has actually 2. And what you find is when you look at this number again, Fullerton has 140,392 people living in it. Fullerton. If you take this thing literally and you try to project it into the future that there's going to be some group of people at the end of the world and it's 144,000, think about how vast and huge the world is. You're telling me at the end, only 144, the size of essentially Fullerton, the city of Fullerton, those are the only people that get to go up there? Like, how ridiculous is that? If you're living in Fullerton, you're like, ow, all right. Like, we made it. But again, it's a crazy thing to consider if you begin taking this whole thing literally. There's something else going on I want to share with you. Here's what it is. The 1,000, this is a unit. And every time a legion, a Roman legion would go into battle, they would actually put their people into thousands. And oftentimes it would be 5,000 for one legion. But when you got lower and lower, you'd find they were actually in smaller groups of 500 to 1,000. And so when a group of people march in the thousands or these units, they're talking about a military. Do you guys see it? So at first, the first picture of this 144,000 looks like a military. It looks like people going into battle. But watch the subtle shift. They stop being a group after they step into the battle. Here's the thing. They don't become units anymore. Notice this. What do they become? A vast crowd. Every nation and tribe and people and language standing in front of the throne before the Lamb. Do you notice something about this? Are they in their own units, their own tribes? Are these the lions and these are the bears over here? What are they? They're one. They're in white. They're standing there shouting with a great roar, palm branches in front of them. Here's what it looks like. They march into battle, but instead of using the way of Rome, here's what they're doing. What is this group? Yeah. What is it? Has everyone ever been in a choir before? Why is it awesome?
Part and we move. It's a good choir.
Good. Everyone has a part, but you're all doing this thing in unity. Anyone ever see a violent showdown with one choir and another? The Jets, right? Yeah, you don't actually see that in reality, do you? Like, dude, did you see the choir from Fullerton? Like, they wrecked that other group, like, violently. It was gross. Swords, all that stuff. It was nuts. They threw B notes. What was that? Yeah, pitch perfect. um, yeah. You don't see choirs typically getting violent with one another. What you see is when choirs begin to come together, they begin to share one voice, one song, and it's really beautiful. So here's the thing about the Jesus movement that I wanted to share with you. When you think of this number, 144,000, it's not a literal number, but it is one that has a beautiful metaphor. When we stop focusing on being an army and we become a choir, that's when beauty happens. When we begin to share in song, and we begin to share in that beauty, life begins to happen. Unity happens. There will never again be hunger or thirst. They will never be scorched by the heat of the sun, for the Lamb on the throne will be their shepherd. He'll lead them to the springs of life, giving water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Isn't that beautiful? When restoration happens, when healing happens, when the Jesus message is followed, that's when we see life take on new life again. Am I right? That's where tears are wiped away, people find healing, people find hope. The message of this first century was this: it's not through war, it's not through famine, it's not through power, it's through love, forgiveness, the Jesus message. It's by a choir being unified, singing together, that we'll find peace again. Interesting, right? That's the message. So again, Avengers, maybe a different take on it would be instead of ending the world in fire, which has always been like the typical response to the book of Revelation, maybe the world begins again with healing and repair and restoration, knowing that we'll experience fire again, but this is what we aim for. In the middle of the pain and the brokenness, this is what we go for. I want to introduce you to Robbie DeMillen, and she's a person who I just highly respect, and this is why. She's part of that Palestinian-Israel group. She's in the middle of it, and she lost her family to some violence there in Israel. Her kids were shot and killed in the street. And instead of doing this, instead of getting angry and saying, the Palestinians, let's get revenge, what she said is, I wonder how many other Palestinian families have had the same thing happen. And so what she did is she created this thing called the Parents Circle Family. And what she does is she brings together Palestinian and Israel families together who have lost children and loved ones. And they learn to cope with the violence, learning to have conversation together. And it's through the loss that is actually bringing them together, united in one song. Come on. Anybody? Is that beautiful? And here's some advice I wanted to share with you from her, not from me. This is the advice she says has helped her through in creating this. You guys ready for it? It's so heavy. I want us to have conversation over it. Here's a quote from her, and she'll give some ideas, but I want to read it to you. If this doesn't hit you, I don't know what will. She said this: I promise you, as one who has lost a child, the pain never goes away. Yes, we put on a mask in our mourning and set out into the world as if it is still the same, but underneath the facade, we are forever damaged. Life takes on a bittersweet tone. No matter how many happy events occur, there's always the empty chair at the table, the missing grandchildren who would have had the complete joy of a wedding or birthday or anniversary. We learn to live with the loss next to us, and we either choose to die with our child, to seek a path of revenge, only to discover that there is no revenge for a lost child. Or in some cases, to walk a path of reconciliation, to prevent others from having their hearts torn out. Choosing the path of reconciliation allows me to give up being a victim and to be free. Let me share with you 3 pieces of advice she said she gives people. Here's the first. Reconciliation does not necessarily mean reconciling with a person who upset you or condoning the action. In forgiveness, you seek the peace and understanding that comes from blaming people less after they offend you and taking those offenses less personally. Summarization of that: don't take the thing personally. How does that land for you?
Person, understanding that maybe whatever was their circumstance previous caused them to be the way they are, or their line of thinking, or whatever it would be, and just have compassion on them that they're just being stupid, and literally, and just, think they were a baby one time too, they're human.
Nice. Yeah, I don't condone the action, right? The action upset me. It was wrong. But when I remove the thing that says I take it personally, how many of you right now, let me just ask it, and you don't have to respond yes or no, but how many of you have had something done to you, or there's something going on, there's conflict within family, friends, whatever, and you are taking it personally? You use statements like, I'm just so frustrated because they don't see this and this and this. I feel this. What happens when you remove the, I'm not going to take this personally anymore? It's freeing. I can say all this because I don't do it yet. I'm learning very slowly, but I found this advice just to wreck me. Any other comments on this quote? Yep.
Important to protect yourself from that happening again. If you're in a bad environment, if you're being treated a certain way, don't keep putting yourself in that situation.
Good. And she'll give more advice on that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, good. Yeah, don't take it personal. It's their issue, not yours. Don't take it personal. The pain, that all of that, it was bad, but blaming them for not being you or having your values or those things is not going to be helpful for you. We will get to Christy's comment, though. Here's the next one she says. There's only a couple. Get the right perspective on what is happening, she says. Recognize that your primary distress is coming from the hurt feelings, thoughts, and physical upset you are suffering now, not from what offended you or hurt you 2 minutes or 10 years ago. Tell me what lands for you in that one. Your primary stress is coming from the hurt feelings you have, the thoughts you have, the physical upset. What stands out to you as you read that quote?
A lot of people have no idea why they're taking action or being offended or hurting someone else, but if they can stop and say, wait, when did that hurts me? What am I feeling? Why am I thinking that? When did it first happen? Or when did I first feel this way? It'll always usually trail back to their childhood somewhere.
Interesting.
Usually always. And so we're walking around as adult children through life. And if we can paddle past that and get through that, being owned by that or having that be our philosophy or something, or our energy that carries us, then we can be at peace in the midst of the turmoil,
Nice.
and go forward no matter what's happening and still stay, like a sailboat. If you have a good ballast, a good weight at the bottom, your sail can go pretty good.
Beautiful. And maybe him leaving his socks out and your response to it.
Right.
Maybe like stopping and asking the question, why am I so pissed that he left his socks on the floor again? Or whatever the thing is. Why is that emotion stirring something up in me so much? Is it really the sock? Or is it something that happened earlier that I have to consider? These are feelings I have. I need to consider my feelings, is what she says. Ugh. Danielle's looking at me like, yeah, so start living this, Tony. Like, start following this stuff you're sharing. Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. Getting to the point of reconciliation, I have to remember these are my feelings, my thoughts. I can't push them on you. Those are my feelings, and I have to own them. I can't push them on you. I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah, there's two more. Here's one that I just like, no, I don't want to hear this. Give up expecting things from your life or from other people that they do not choose to give you. Remind yourself that you can hope for health, love, friendship, and prosperity and work hard to get them. However, these are unforceable rules. You will suffer when you demand that these things occur, since you do not have the power to make them happen. Why is this like hitting you right now? Anyone? Most of us. Anyone else? Like, why are you just like, ugh?
I'm smiling right now. Because I am happy.
Nice.
Because I do that hard work. Giving up the expectation, even when someone has told me literally, like almost a promise, and then they're like, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, wasn't what I thought it was. I know my hurt, and I'm happy.
Nice.
So there, I'll get it back with happiness.
Anyone ever do this? You do something,
Right on.
you choose to love that person, forgive that person, and then you're like, but I expect you to do this thing. We have this joke, a couple of my friends, we often talk about people often will play the part, whatever part they play. Many people will have like, they're that flat character. They'll always do that thing. And when they do that thing, for you to be surprised that they're playing that part is insane. It's like, well, no, that's what they do. Like, that's their part. That's what they play. Why would you expect something different? Like, that's what they do. So stop it making these expectations that it's going to be different. Yeah. Here's the last one. Remember that a life well lived is your best revenge. Instead of focusing on your wounded feelings and thereby giving power over you to the person who caused you pain, learn to look for the love, beauty, and kindness around you. Put more energy into appreciating what you have rather than attending to what you do not have. I like that idea of revenge there because it's totally different. When you are happy, and again, let's be honest, if you're trying to be happy to get revenge on someone, you look like an idiot. Like, it looks so forced and so weird. Like, there you are on social media. You're like, I know it's going, like, you're kind of being phony right now. Like, I know those people. Sometimes I think we all are those people. But learning to live the best you is, that's, and sometimes you do have those moments, right, where you're like shaking your hands toward heaven and you're angry and you're just needing to spout some venom. That happens too, for me. I'm thankful for the liquid dinner I'll be having to wash down our family drama. A friend of mine, I want to end with this. He said that every family event, oh my goodness, it's almost 12, every family event he's been at for the last 15, 20 years, so it always ends up with a bunch of drama. So at the dinner table, they'll come together, someone will bring up something, and before you know it, religion and politics or whatever it is just gets ugly. He said he is usually the one that becomes the target. And he said over and over again, he has just told himself, I'm not going to attend the freaking dinner again. But he says he always ends up being put back in that place where he's sitting at the table with these people, right? He said he's slowly begun to change the way he's interacting with them. Kirk, I think he's even listening today. He said that one of the things that has helped him so much is he's learned to focus here. And he said once he's been focused here, learning to accept this, learning to love this, he said he can now in turn love the people around him. He said oftentimes he doesn't agree with what dad or mom say about his religious experience, his political views, any of those things. He's learning to put a lot of those things into practice. And he said now when he's around family, because again, let's be honest, family is sometimes the one group that seems to pull out the worst in you. Sometimes the best, but sometimes the worst. They can just create conflict. He said because he's begun to see that restoration's not going to come in the form of more conflict, more arguments. He will never have the perfect argument to win the battle at the table. He's learned to instead simply smile, love them, ask very surface questions, and learn to do his best to be a Jesus Christ follower. Recycle the hate, the anger with love, not take it personally, and continue to walk that path. And so that's what I wanted to end with today is this book of Revelation really is about learning to do just that. In the middle of conflict and brokenness and empire and power and revenge, that kind of culture, learning to live that and be that kind of person like the Jesus Christ message, that takes on a whole new thing for us. That becomes a real voice of protest. I hope you enjoyed this different take on this book of Revelation. Next week, I'm going to share some ideas to close off the whole idea of what this book is. I'm going to talk about this interesting city that drops from the sky, what that's all about. I'm going to talk about how this book ends and what it actually means to us today. I'm going to close it out in a way that I think you're going to enjoy. Maybe you might hate it, but hey, even better conversation, right? So Betty's going to come up, and Steve's going to share some closing words and other stuff.
All right, so like I said before, last year at this time, we're meeting in backyards, mine, Tony's, various other people's houses. Then we moved on to a coffee shop, and we moved on to like a croissant type deal, whatever you want to call it. Now we're here at the loft. Can you imagine where we're going next? I really can't. I don't know if you guys can, but it really doesn't matter to me if we go on to the Angel Stadium and we're doing Harvest Crusade type stuff as a bigger ethos, or if we're back in our living rooms doing ethos. I think ethos is more than a place to me. Imagine if we did this with more people. If this is so cool doing it with just us, imagine doing it with more people. Like Tony was talking about, there's good and bad in everybody's lives, in everybody's churches, and everybody's environments. But if we can focus on the good, it's that much easier to get through the bad. If we want to go into battle going as an army in these legions, or if we want our voices together and moving forward in love. I want to share with you just one really quick thing. I usually don't share stories really like outside of my own, but this happened at work, and I'm pretty confident that this person probably won't be watching, but it was a fellow worker, and they belong to another church. I found out a lot about them and their backstory, and his parents are actually pastors at another church, really cool church actually, but he had a different perspective. He's a young kid, okay, I'll say it. He's 20 years old. He got married at 20 years old last year. He just turned 21 2 days ago, and he's going to have a child in October. He said that he was worried about his child being born. He hopes his child isn't born. The due date is October 30th. I was like, got me really interested. Why are you so worried about that date? My birthday is October 29th. But I didn't quickly tell him the date of my birthday. I just wanted to hear his side of things first. And he said, well, you know, Halloween's there, and people are just thinking about ugly costumes, and it's satanic, and you know, all the negative connotations that Halloween brings with it. And just so happened that our conversation kind of got cut right there, so I couldn't tell him my side of thing now defending my birthday, right? Oh, my birthday's on Halloween. I had Halloween birthday parties, and they were cool. But anyways, he went on break. I went to a different area, but then when I came back, I had time to kind of reflect on it a little bit and say, how am I going to defend my birthday era time frame? And Halloween, I love Halloween. You get candy. So I thought about it, and I found myself not only defending my birthday or the Halloween thing. Of course, I was thinking about his daughter. I'm like, oh man, you're going to ruin her birthday if she's born on Halloween. All of a sudden it's going to be negative because you're talking negative. I didn't want to tell him that. So I came to this realization, I guess, or I was trying to imagine the scenario, and I said, well, think about it. You're Christian, right? I'm Christian. We believe in Christ. What are the two most celebrated Christian events that we have in a year? Oh, Christmas. Yeah, Christmas is number one, right? Why? Well, it's the birth of Christ. He was born to save us from our sins, right? Every good Christian knows the response to that. So yeah, you're right. It's awesome, right? We love Christmas. It's good. Now, what's the second most celebrated holiday? Well, easy, Easter. Well, why? Well, because Christ gave his life for us, and without that, we wouldn't have salvation, and we're free of sins. Or like, wow. So that's awesome how you see it as a very positive holiday. What happened on Easter? Well, And he didn't even finish his phrase. He's all, while he was I know where you're going with this. So a lot of times it's perspective, right? We know that during Easter is one of the most horrific times as Christians. We, Christians, not me personally, not you personally, but Christians at that time essentially killed Christ, the Redeemer, before he was able to be resurrected. But we don't concentrate on that at Easter. We concentrate on the good. So I said, when your daughter's born, are you going to concentrate on that good part of Easter, on that good part of her birthday and celebrate it? Or are you going to concentrate it during a time that some people choose to do bad things? So there's good and bad in our lives. And I love quotes too. Tony brought up some quotes right there by some people. I love a couple quotes, and they go with the Lamblike protest and the protesting. Mahatma Gandhi is probably the number one Lamblike protester there is. I love his movie, and he says, be the change you want to see in the world, right? And we grew up each individually or maybe as a whole in certain ways of worshiping and religious atmospheres, and they don't seem to change. They seem to be in the same routine. It's great. Every church has their good about them, especially Christian churches, right? We believe they all have good to offer. But imagine a place where we can come and be ourselves. Imagine a place where we can belong in a community, small or large, and that we can each week grow and become a better version of ourselves. I believe that's Ethos. Here at Ethos, a lot of stuff goes into it. You know, the food, the rental of the place, the lights, the music, everything. It takes a lot. Another quote is by Mother Teresa. People say, oh, you do such great things and wonderful things. She says, I don't do great things. I do small things, but I do it with great love. So we can all contribute to Ethos, whether we want Ethos to stay like this. I would love to see Ethos touch everybody in the world, you know, because I believe what we're doing, everybody should do it or believe in that way. They don't have to worship how we do. They don't have to present it like we do. They can do it within their own churches. I hope they do it in a church like Ethos. But I'd like to see our Ethos community grow, or at least flourish, you know. We can do a small thing, but with great love. We don't want you to feel obligated by giving if you give $100, wow, now I can't pay my rent. It's kind of crazy, right? You can do small thing. If you can't afford it, $20. If you can't afford $20, $5. I'm sure we can all afford $1, but it has to start somewhere. So if we do a small thing with great love, or a great thing with greater love, then I think we'll grow what we're actually trying to promote, be, belong, and become. So on the tables in front of you are the envelopes. If you'd like to do that now or afterwards, whenever you like to do it, or if you can't do it this week, next week, please contribute. Online, you're not left out either. You can go to our Ethos website and you can contribute online as well. And we have different payment options. So please be that small change that we're trying to create with amongst us and essentially throughout the world, which we're called to do.
I'm trying to find the space to do this, but I've experienced a lot of family and heartache and wrong perspectives or perceptions, and I guess happiness is the best revenge, but without the intention of revenge. So, it's time for healing, time to move on. It's time to fix what's been broken too long. Time to make right what has been wrong. It's time to find my way to where I belong. There's a wave that's crashing over me. All I can do is surrender. Whatever you're doing inside of me, it feels like chaos, but somehow there's peace. It's hard to surrender heavenly. Time for a milestone, time to begin again. Reevaluate who I really am. Am I doing everything to follow your will? Or just climbing aimlessly over these hills? So show me what it is you want from me. I give everything, I surrender. Whatever you're doing inside of me, it feels like chaos, but somehow there's peace. It's hard to surrender to what I can't see, but I'm giving into something heavenly. Whatever you're doing inside of me, it feels like chaos, but somehow there's peace. It's hard to surrender to what I can't see, but I'm giving into something heavenly. I barely knew what you were going to talk about today. Whew. Y'all know this song, so I expect help. No, I'm kidding.
Ooh, I didn't know I was going to be interrupting.
Are you coming back?
Yes, I'm coming back. I can't give up the mic. You know what? I hate this. This is the worst thing anybody can tell me. Tony knows this. Like, oh, move to the front. I hate that, especially when I'm sitting down already. But you know what? I'm just going to go for it today. Ethos, and I'm going to share the deepest part of ethos right here, right? How we can all be individuals and believe certain ways. Tony is not ethos. Betty is not ethos. I'm not ethos. Nobody is ethos. But together we're ethos. It really is. And as much as I hate to ask this, can we all come over here to the front and do the whole kumbaya and hold hands right now? Because you know what? We see the same people week after week. And I love you guys at my house or at Ethos. Can we just come together just for this one song and be Ethos together and remember what Ethos is about? Just right here in this room.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No help below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Ooh. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Oh,
get back to that one slide, I'm just going to move us back there. I want you just to, sometimes we pray, sometimes we meditate, sometimes we just hug each other. We do different practices. But I want to go back to that slide with that quote from, I already forgot her name now. The quotes that I gave you earlier. If we can just get back to my slideshow, I'll quick pull those up. There we are. So I want you just to close your eyes for a moment. I want to read this to you. And I have a feeling that it's going to strike someone exactly how they needed it to strike. So here we go. Again, learning to reconcile, learning to move through the pain. I promise you, as one who has lost a child, the pain never goes away, but we put on our mask in mourning, set out into the world as if it is still the same. But underneath this facade, we are forever damaged. Life takes on a bittersweet tone. No matter how many happy events occur, there's always an empty chair at the table, the missing grandchildren we would have had, the complete joy of a wedding or birthday or anniversary. We learn to live with the loss next to us, and we either choose to die with our child, seek a path of revenge, only to discover that there is no revenge for a lost child, or in some cases to walk a path of reconciliation. I want to read that part again. Or, in some cases, to walk a path of reconciliation, to prevent others from having their hearts torn out. And I'll listen real close. Choosing the path of reconciliation allows me to give up being a victim and to be free. And so right now I want you to picture what freedom looks like for you. Stop choosing the path of revenge, injustice, getting back, pulling away only to hurt, but choosing the path that says, I'm giving up this need to be the victim, and I'm choosing to be free. I'm choosing to be free and let my life speak freedom. Let my life speak love. Let my life speak forgiveness. May that be what your life speaks this week, and everything you choose to do and every reaction you have. Let your life speak love. Amen? Awesome. Turn to the people around you, give them big hugs, and we can't wait to see you guys next week.